Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing a review for the Kirito Figma, made by Good Smile and Max Factory. This is the Alicization version, which I believe, at the posting of this video, is the most recent version. I could be wrong. I don't watch it as much, but I do like the figures. On the front, we have a window to the figure and his limited accessories. We have all the information, sales outside of Japan only. Figma number 435, pretty good. On the side, we get pose, more stuff. On the back, we get a multitude of poses, as well as health-related things, legal stuff, and a QR code for something. Pretty cool. And on the other side, one of the many poses shown on the back. On the bottom, another pose, as well as a barcode. And on the top, another pose and more information. Let's get him out, and let's see what he's got to offer. He's outside the box, as we can see. Looks very nice from what we see so far. But we need to actually handle the figure to see if it's good. With the top cover taken off, we can now experience the figure itself and its limited accessories. Out of the box, or rather out of its plastic packaging, everything smells really nice. And while that is a weird, while that is something weird to mention for a figure, personally I prefer the new plastic smell. It shows that it was upkept pretty well, and despite the current conditions that we're having to go through. It shows that, like, this was probably stale air. It's probably bad that I, breathed that in so deeply. So yeah. From right now, we can see the figure itself, the two faceplates for it, and the two swords. Now, you'd probably ask, well, there's three, not two. Incorrect, actually. That one in the scabbard is actually probably just part of a sword. More like, probably about that much of the actual sword isn't there. Just about that much. At least that's how it was with the last Kirito figure that I had, which, yes, was a bootleg. It's probably way too late to mention that now, I bet. But, yeah, let's get looking at the figure. Lovely little plastic bed he's got. So now, with the figure out of its plastic shell and all that, we can finally get to see how it is. Now, because this is an actual figure that was made by Good Smile and not a bootleg or weird third-party sort of thing, it's not loose. And I thank the gods for that. I mean, oh, that's very tight. That was a very tight joint. I don't know if you could hear it, but ooh, you got the squeaks. It's a good sign of really tight joints, which, if too tight, is really bad. But in the case of this, it'll be really good. Really good for posing. Tight joints make for really good poses. Alright, so let's get on to articulation, after we get a good look at the very boring pants. So, the head can swivel left and right pretty well. It can look up pretty good for a figure, and it can look down really good for a figure. Oh, he's getting a little topsy-turvy. It's hard doing things with one hand, but he can look up and down pretty well. His arms, they can move out. We're doing it like this. He's got a good range of motion. Pretty good. And despite how his arm looks sometimes, with it being like down here, I believe that's specifically for posing of the figure. So nothing weird about that. Just, looks a little dislocated. But it's always fixable by just pushing it up there. Same with the other arm as usual. The legs, not being floppy meat sticks like last time, you can get a pretty good kick. Good for any knee attack poses or knee thrusting. As usual with most Kirito figures, I presume, really great bend in the knee. Ooh, his leg can go back that far. Pretty good for aerial poses. I'd say that's really good for an aerial pose right there. And his feet go that far back, forward. They can rotate. That's obviously something that they can do. I think that's about it. You got any side to side? They do. They have side to side. Now you can have them at like weird different poses. I'd say this one's pretty good. And it doesn't have any like, well, it's not true. He's got his lower jacket piece in the way, which separates slightly so that you can actually have his legs go back and not get stuck. He looks very gentlemanlike in this. Very nice. So, posing and the figure itself looks really nice. But what about its other pieces? And before we move on to other pieces... Uh-oh. There we go. That's his face. Really good looking. Really good. I like that. But let's move on to his other faces. His other faces include this grinning face, which can be used after he dealt a really good attack, or just for some basic posing. I would imagine with swords and such, trying to look cool and all that. And his other face, an angry face, as I imagine would be common with most anime figures, some kind of angry face. This one yelling as he's like attacking, or there's no sadness to it, so it can't be like, seeing like a Suna getting hit or something. But it definitely would be like anger for seeing that. As usual, his dark gray eyes. Uh-oh, we went out of focus. There we go. Yeah, pretty good. And obviously they swap in and out as most Figma heads do. Pretty good. He doesn't have any pointy elf ears this time, because this is the Alicization version, and not the ALO version. Let's move on to his swords. Now, unfortunately, I don't know the names for these swords. I don't really know the names for a lot of swords. That won't focus. That will not focus. Alright, well, I guess we have the blurry red blade of blurriness. I really don't want to focus on that. There we go. Not very good, but... yeah. We have the blurry red blade of blurriness. It looks very nice. It, kind of like a blood sword, I'd imagine. If you had like an anime Adventure Time Finn figure, or, well, if that ever existed, you could definitely use this as like a blood sword. The demon blood sword. That was a funny set of series. But what I can actually see, and what the camera won't pick up, is, well, at the middle of the little crossroad there, between the handle and the blade, there's a little rose, or I assume it's a rose. Definitely cool. Up next is the sword I imagine Kirito uses pretty often in the series, which it too is also becoming the blurry blade of blurriness. There we go. But as like most of Kirito's weaponry, or his like most common ones, it's very dark. This one, I noticed, in the correct lighting, the blade looks like super blue. It's like a weird, like, metallic blue and black mix, which makes it look very cool. And I think, like, because of how my phone is, it's, like, showing off that blue a bit extra, which I guess really just helps make my point. But it looks very cool. Definitely worth the, if you were collecting like anime swords of all shapes and sizes, this would be a good sword to get. especially if you were doing like customs and you wanted to do like a Black Knight or something like that. Definitely worth it. And finale, we have his black sword, but in its sheath. And like I said before, oh well, I lied. That's how you'd that's how you'd be able to put it in his hands, is by taking the handle off, which connects very easily with a peg. There we go. But upon closer inspection, it's not an actual sword. It's just the hilt. Now that I have this up and close, that itself looks very nice. But we're here to see the sheath. Now the sheath itself, like its blade, it's very dark, very blue, very nice looking. Definitely worth it. And here, this is new to me, because with the old figure, or with older figures, I assumed it just pegged into the back, via like some small hole other than the one for the Figma stand. However, this one doesn't do that. I assume this one actually goes into the back with the Figma peg. So I'm gonna see if it goes through, and well, we'll see what happens if it does. Well, I feel silly for thinking it went into the back. Nothing else is supposed to go into the back other than the Figma stand, but it's actually supposed to go into this little white strip here, which, now that I think about it, makes a lot more sense than the back. But it's also probably because it's on the actual posing itself and I didn't see it. No, this is a very nice place for a sword. It's probably a lot more common to have your sword on your side, specifically your non-dominant side, as you're supposed to reach over and grab the sword, like like he's doing right now. And if that's anything, and because it's a bendy white piece here at the side, he's able to just, if you can't reach over and have him grab it himself, you can just help him out by moving it yourself. I guess that's part of his belt, isn't it? Maybe it is. I imagine it probably would be. But yeah, so now he can grab a sword like that instead of over his shoulder. I do miss that, because I do prefer the shoulder sheaths, but I like this style too. It's very useful, and it's probably a lot better for quick draws. Very cool. Very epic. Now, we're going to move on to his hands, because he does come with a lot more than just two fists. In our wonderful bag here, we've got all of his hands and the Figma stand, as well as a Figma bag to put all your Figma needs in here. Basically for any extra pieces that you don't want to accidentally lose, like hands or, like small pieces like pendants or something like that. This is probably like the first time I've gotten one too, which is it's a very nice first for me. These are very nice bags. Very thick too. Cool though. Now we move on to these other bits, specifically his stand and his hands. We're going to go with his hands first, and the extra little bits that come with them. Here we find his different hands. As we can see, he's got 7 different hands and an extra hand peg in case any of one of them break. Now we have here 2 sword holding hands, or semi-closed hands for holding things like swords. We have 2 open hands for like going like yeah or or something like that. We have an extra hand that, if looked at closer, seems to be for a specific pose, I imagine. There we go. I imagine it's probably for a specific pose, as well as 2 other hands that seem specific for posing. I imagine it's on the box somewhere, the hands to use for these, but they can probably be used in a multitude of different poses. This hand, specifically, right here, I imagine is actually for holding the scabbard or the sheath, for when he draws it out with his other hand, which would be right, left. It would be this hand. Very cool. I'm glad that piece exists. That seems like a very useful piece. I like that hand. It's funky looking. But onto the stand now. Hands are done. Like a majority of all Figmas, I'm definitely sure that there are some that don't have clear bases, but like a majority of all Figmas, he comes with a clear base, a clear little extendy hand for different poses, and an extra little piece that I imagine is probably something useful for like getting a bit more distance probably on certain poses. But it's definitely useful, I imagine. And it probably will be. Yeah. But now that he's all splayed out on my floor and all that, I think I might try a pose or two. Just so I can have a little bit extra time in the video that I can't really afford. But I'll put him in a pose and I'll end the video there. And for our pose, something kind of simple, kind of basic, but it makes use of his scabbard holding hand and sword holding hand. It's him drawing out his weapon to probably go to attack someone. Or just in general. But yeah. I'd give this figure 10 out of 10. Looks really good, feels good, and it's really awesome. I hope to see you all again for a future release. And another future review. And a little side note about the reviews, and just in videos in general. Videos are a bit sporadic. So, yeah. Sometimes it'll be like a video, like bam, bam, bam. And then other times it'll just be like video, and then a month of silence. But despite that, I hope that I'm able to keep making videos, and just doing it for fun. I will see you guys and gals and those in between and outside of the spectrum. I'll see you all in the future. Bye for now.